Hello, I'm
And
Dylan,
I'm Keon.
and this is Triple Play, that podcast where we just shoehorn episodes in between other episodes. Because this week we read We Don't Need Roads, the making of the Back to the Future trilogy by Caseen Gaines.
Right, and if you didn't already know, this is episode 1.5.
Yeah, you're probably like, what does that even mean? Dylan, Keon, what are you doing? You're sabotaging yourself. No, we're not. We're widening our fan base is what we're doing.
And we're also undermining everything that we set out to do with episode 0, or everything we explained in episode 0.
Yeah,
pretty
not everything
much.
we set out to do.
No.
We set out to make a successful podcast, and if anything, this will contribute to that.
Yes.
Contribute. Right, so basically, because we thought a 2-month release schedule would, 1, be really long time to wait between episodes, and 2, would be difficult to keep down a consistent subscriber base, we decided to start doing kind of these mini extra episodes in the interim months as kind of an expansion upon the trilogy we had talked about.
Right, so, we'll either read something, watch something, do something, or...
Do something.
I don't know. We'll have...
LARP.
Yeah. No. We'll have something to discuss on the previous month's movie trilogy. In the 0.5 episodes. So
Right. Which also means we'll be moving to a consistent release date so that you can always look forward to Triple Play episodes. I think we're going to go with the first Wednesday of every month. We'll release a Triple Play episode, alternating between the full, we've watched a trilogy, here's kind of our thoughts and behind the scenes on it, and the kind of mini, let's investigate something else related to the trilogy episodes.
right, and like of course we mentioned right at the beginning, this time we read the recently released making of book for Back to the Future. We Don't Need Roads by Caseen Gaines.
We almost played the video game.
Almost. Well, I think that was just a passing conversation where we were like, should
Yeah.
we read the book or play the game? And we decided to read the book.
If we started a Let's Play channel, we can play the game. And make snarky comments about the video game. But no, we went with the book because we didn't want to play through a 5-episode Telltale game, of which each episode took me alone 2 hours to do originally. So like 10 hours of work right there for this.
Right.
I guess we'll just jump into what we thought about the book now that you understand what this miniature episode is and why it exists.
Right. So, the book, it was released recently. I think at the end of June, was it?
It was after we
Well-
recorded our Back to the Future episode, but before it went out. So I think it was the first week of July, actually,
Well, we can just
or the
look.
final week of June.
Um,
So it was released on June 23rd, 2015. I think that was like 2 days after we recorded the Back to the Future episode, actually.
right, and about 2 months ago now.
Yeah.
So, this book was billed as, a comprehensive look back slash investigation
Yeah.
into the making of the entire Back to the Future trilogy, all in one place. Because, it's not like really the making of these movies is a secret. A lot of people know about a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that
Yeah.
went on here, whether it was in DVD, documentary things, online interviews,
Or our
articles.
podcast.
Yeah, or us. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, the making of these movies is
Public domain
yeah,
knowledge.
It's public knowledge.
It is pretty comprehensive, though. Covers a lot of stuff that is difficult to find online, or probably even impossible to find online.
Right, there was a lot in this book that I did not know.
Right.
Obviously, some of that information is available online, or you might have to hunt some of it down. But
Yeah.
Maybe for the casual viewer, like who isn't super interested in who likes Back to the Future, but isn't a diehard fan, who's willing to look for these things and spend their time.
Right.
That the book does do a good job of bringing those things up. But I think my complaints are more extreme than Dylan's. But I think we both. I'll just start by saying we both agreed that the writing style was not up to
At
par
least,
with what I expected it would
yeah, at
be.
least what we expected.
The book was written very casually, almost as if it was just someone talking. That's what I imagine, and that's fine, I guess. But it's not really something I would want out of a book like this. I want
Yeah.
something a bit more formal.
Yeah, for a making of book, I think we both expected something more, something that felt like it could stand, alongside really technical, heavy books, but still be understandable to the casual reader.
Yeah,
You know, I think this week I think I expected a Devil in the White City, but for Back to the Future, if you've
Yeah.
ever read Devil in the White City,
that's what I was thinking too. Exactly what I was thinking, actually. But this,
that book's by Eric Larson. If you're curious,
right, and I don't think this didn't live up to my expectation of what I thought it would be in terms of that. And it wasn't. Well, we'll just talk about the style first.
yeah. Let's try to stay on topic. This episode is a bit of an experiment,
As well,
as is this whole show. But
I also thought the writing style was, I'll be honest, quite bad.
it's the English major in you speaking.
It is. Well, I know Caseen Gaines. I read his little bio. He's a high school English teacher slash theater. He directs high school theater, he directs theater. I assume high school theater.
Yeah.
And maybe this is his students' writing style rubbing off. I don't know, or I don't know. The entire thing to me just seemed like it read like an extended high school essay. It was just, there were parts in the book that just seemed to want to try and convince readers about how great the Back to the Future trilogy is. And don't get me wrong, I love the Back to the Future trilogy, but anyone reading this book probably agrees with you. You don't need to, Gaines, I don't think really needed to make those points that don't exactly have anything to do with the making of the movies. They have more to do with, the themes or the style.
Thematic analysis.
Yeah, I guess. That's partly the high school teacher in him.
The heavy thematical analysis of the Back to the Future trilogy.
But he just didn't need to have paragraph upon paragraph about how
Cinematographically?
Yeah.
Cinematographically?
That's not even a word, I don't think, but you just didn't need to have paragraph upon paragraph about how brilliant these movies are. I get it. Okay. And, yeah.
Yeah.
He was kind of a blatant Back to the Future fanboy, I think. Nothing wrong with that, but I would want the book to be a little bit more, or try and be a little bit more objective.
Or a little bit more neutral.
Yeah.
At least. I think the whole, how does it work, cinematography-wise, is an important part of how it's made, but I think it needs to be looked at more in more of an objective manner. This is how they did blank blank, compared to how they, maybe how Zemeckis did it in his previous films, or how Spielberg does it compared to Zemeckis, rather than just being like, Zemeckis is all holy god of directing Back to the Future.
Oh, praise Zemeckis. No, I don't know. Other problems I had with the style, there was so much passive voice here, and it ticked me off. It ticked me off, and it just made this a chore to get through, really. So much passive voice. I'm not sure why that was. Gaines is a high school teacher. You think that would be something that he deals with on a daily basis and tries to correct, but and progressive tense a lot. I guess that's just a stylistic thing, which I don't write like that. It's, I guess,
Getting
try
very
not to
technical
be.
here.
I'm trying not to be too critical. I feel bad that I have more bad things to say than good, but at the same time,
Right.
if you're putting your book out there, expect all kinds of response. So
We'll talk about what we liked in a bit, obviously, to try and balance it out a bit. But I also kind of felt the prose was super casual. I don't think I went so far as to say this is passive voice, because I don't usually look for that, nor do I notice it. But it did feel super casual. We mentioned that before. Another strange problem that I had was I feel the title is really long and unwieldy.
We don't need roads. The making of the Back to the Future.
Yeah, because like it doesn't work as just we don't need roads. Because you know what are you talking about? So you need to have the making of the Back to the Future trilogy in there, but then when you add that, it becomes super long and unwieldy.
Maybe.
I almost felt like the title kind of detracts from the novel. It's like it's such a mouthful to say, and I know in text conversations we've shortened it so far down to just don't need roads. It's just kind of a chore to say.
I know each chapter title is a quote from the movie, I believe, or something to do with
which I did like, actually. I did enjoy that aspect of the chapter
that was interesting. Chapter 1 is Think, McFly, Think. Mm-hmm. And then we got Do It With Some Style.
Yeah. I think that chapter was about costuming.
Yeah, You're George McFly.
About Crispin Glover.
Yeah. But that actually leads into another one of my complaints is that the chapters didn't really seem, obviously you'd think the one that said titled You're George McFly would be about Crispin Glover, but if you go and read that chapter, only about half of it is about the Crispin Glover controversy. There didn't the narrative here was, I guess, semi-chronological, and that's okay, but it didn't really seem to be weaved together all that well.
Right. Once again, I think we're looking for the devil in the white city rather than the casual conversation.
Right, and I know. I guess I'm sort of trying to be an apologist here, just because of how much bad I have to say about this. But I know in the acknowledgments, Gaines mentions that he was pressed for time writing this. That might have something to do with it. But at the same time, I feel that someone billing this as a comprehensive look at the Back to the Future trilogy could have done a better job weaving it all together and making it make more sense and making each chapter more coherent or about just one thing.
Right, yeah. It's a bit jumpy. It also kind of spends a long time talking about Eric Stoltz, and then even when chronologically it's moved on from Eric Stoltz being let go, so to speak, it's still fine. Caseen Gaines still finds a way to kind of bring up Eric Stoltz like 3 chapters later. Like, remember when Eric Stoltz was part of this film? Right, yes, you do.
Right, he refers to it as the Stoltz era, which I thought was a little bit silly.
Well, remember when Stoltz was part of this film.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, Gaines does, he did do comprehensive interviews for this, I suppose.
Right.
And there are a lot of quotes in the book from a lot of different cast, crew members, a lot of important people.
Right.
But I felt a lot of the times the quotes were implemented poorly. They went on for too long, and he didn't pick the parts he needed out of them as well as I thought he could have. Just in my opinion, a lot of times it seemed as if part of the quote would have to do with what Gaines was talking about at that time, but then it would just go on into something else. But he sort of condensed there.
Yeah.
Shortened, cut off, whatever you want to call it, and I thought that kind of detracted from my overall enjoyment.
Yeah, I see that. Got a bit long-winded in some bits.
Yeah, just a lack of focus, I think, in general.
Yeah, that would do it, so to speak. Yeah, there's not much else that I disliked too much about this book. Don't know if there's anything else you want to mention that you disliked.
That's basically it. I thought I was going to go on more of a rant than that, but
the big ones are kind of the style and the long-windedness of a lot of the portions of the book. Also, the whole, you remember when Eric Stoltz was part of this film, right?
Well, he does. I'm guessing this is just because he got a really good interview with Waters Jr. But Gaines does go into detail a lot about Waters, who played Marvin Berry. Who is... That scene is pretty famous from the first movie, and it's funny. It's a great scene, or a great little line there, but I mean, it's not a defining feature of the Back to the Future trilogy. So
Uh,
he goes into the detail
yeah.
about that a lot.
He did mention something that I don't think we mentioned. In our whole, there's a lot of parallels between the things. We didn't mention that there was a band in all three of them, and the book does mention that they tried to fit Waters Jr. and the Starlighters into the third film, but having an African American, so to speak, in the Old West doesn't really make sense unless you make them slaves, and then it just gets awkward. So that's why that didn't happen, But what I liked about the book was it did provide a lot of information that is difficult or more difficult to find online or just through other sources. I guess because he conducted so many interviews for this novel.
Book. Right. Structure and coherency aside, this book does have a lot of information that I didn't know that I'm glad I know now. So, I mean, I don't regret reading it because I know so much more about the Back to the Future trilogy now.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I probably wouldn't have ever known if I had just, maybe looked this stuff up online in passing. Or I was most interested, he goes into a lot of detail about the power of love and Huey Lewis and the news. I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite parts of the book.
I particularly liked the whole stunt chapter, talking about stunts and how someone almost died filming stunts in Back to the Future 2 twice.
Right, I had no idea about that either. that was almost insane. And but one thing I can say I did like was Gaines' objectiveness, I guess is the term, when talking about Glover, because I would, based on how much I had read so far, at the point where he gets to the Crispin Glover controversy, I assumed he would just take the studio's side blatantly.
And hang him out to dry, so to speak.
Yeah, but he almost portrays... I say he does a good job being objective there, and I'd say if you had to choose one or the other, I say he almost portrays Glover in the more positive light.
He makes him more of a sympathetic character, I think, rather than how a lot of other sources seem to portray Glover as this evil, he's gonna sue the studio guy, whereas Gaines does a good job of bringing in, like, oh yeah, a lot of the actors really liked him, but the production crew didn't. But at the same time, Glover just, the negotiations fell through, and it wasn't necessarily Glover or Gale's fault. Like, they both went to each other with negotiations and offers, and they both just ended up turning each other down a lot. There was an interesting bit where he says that Gale claims that that Glover fired his agents and got new ones. Then Gale said, "This is our final offer. Like, if you try to come back with another offer, I'm going to lower my final offer." And they came back with another offer, and Gale lowered his offer, and Glover wasn't too happy about that. Interesting half chapter, I guess, because it devolves into talking about other things.
Right. And, there was the stuff about Jeffrey Weissman. I'm just going to call him Weissman. Who, really got the short end of the stick, I think.
Yeah.
It was just shoved in the middle of the Crispin Glover issue without really knowing what he was getting into, I guess.
Yeah.
That was very interesting to read.
I mean, it also makes mention of how Weissman basically had a difficult time finding work after this because everyone just saw him as the guy who came in to replace Glover.
Yeah. That's unfortunate that... Yeah, so definitely a lot of stuff here that I didn't know that I'm glad I know now. Yeah. If only it had been written better, really.
I think that's our chief beef with the novel book. I would recommend it for people who like the Back to the Future franchise and want to learn more if you can get past the casual writing style.
Yeah, I would say, just if you're willing to read something that isn't exactly the most well put together work out there and you really like Back to the Future, go for it. If you think you don't know most of the info in the book, go for it.
Yeah.
But if not, if you're not a super huge Back to the Future fan, or if you're very critical of an author's writing style, I'd say it's not worth it.
Yeah, I can see that. This ended up being more of a review episode, I suppose. So email us at the Trust your doctor. The doctor at decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, arguments, love letters. Do you disagree with our assessment of We Don't Need Roads? I assume that there has to be people out there who disagree.
I think most people love this book, based on Amazon reviews.
Yeah, all those 5-star reviews on Amazon. There's a couple 2-star, 3-star. Obviously, this was a bit of an experimental episode, and all of these not 1.5 necessarily, 0.5 episodes will be experimental in a lot of sense. We have
the cutting edge of podcasts. Technology.
We're leading the pack. We have some ideas.
We don't need roads. I'm just kidding.
We have some ideas for what we're going to do for some of our future trilogies, which will definitely be interesting. Check us out on iTunes, leave a rating if you like this show. We're on YouTube, also at Triple Play on both of those. We're the logo with the weird green color.
Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/3P Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter, 3P Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And, definitely for trilogies in the future that we do, send out your recommendations. Do you want us to do a certain thing for the 0.5 episode for that trilogy? Tell us. We might do it. So,
yeah.
Until next time, the end.